Good evening, everyone. I again welcome you all to the ICAN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. So, at the outset, I wanted to talk about a few things. Many of you have commented in the description, have commented below, and have also messaged regarding the initiative was not uploaded on Saturday and Sunday. So, I wanted to clarify that this initiative is from Monday to Friday. And the second thing I wanted to tell is some of you had issues about the length of the video yesterday, that it was too long. The reason being that on Monday it will usually be longer because I will have to cover the current affairs of both Friday as well as Saturday. So even in the future, it is going to be a little bulkier on Monday. So these are the two things that I wanted to tell. So now let's start with today's class. So at the outset, I'll wish you all a happy National Civil Services Day. And as you all know that Mr. Vallabhbhai Patel had called the civil services to be the steel frame of India. So we all are aspiring to be the civil service, to be part of the steel frame. So I wish you all the best on this day, and let's cherish this day and work harder and commit ourselves to the cause of the people. So because today is a Civil Services Day, I would also like to share with you a story of an amazing district collector whose initiative could achieve a lot. So today we are going to talk about the district collector of Kannur in Kerala, Mir Mohammad Ali. He is a 2011 batch IAS officer, and his achievement was that when he became the district collector of Kannur in April 2017, so within a span of 5 months, he was able to make Kannur completely plastic free. And apart from that, he also encouraged the use of handloom made the handlooms and the bags and cloth bags and all that, so by the Weavers Cooperative Society. So he encouraged such cooperative societies also, and he even collaborated with the local bodies so that with the help of them they could take stern action against those who violated this and who were continuing to use plastic. And through his efforts, Kannur became the first district across the country to be completely plastic free. So this is a success story of a civil servant. I hope you all tomorrow have a similar success story that we can all share with each other. So with this, we will start with the first topic of the day, which is regarding the India-China relations. India-China relations is in news today because the government has taken a decision to ban foreign direct investment through automatic route from the neighboring countries, which share border with India. So this particularly is to do with China because India is very apprehensive of FDIs from China, because the reason for this is, and the first reason is that at this point of time, because of the COVID crisis, several companies are facing a lot of economic distress. So tomorrow, once the lockdown is all revoked, these companies which will be cash strapped will have reduced valuations. So China could take advantage of this, and it could start investing through the FDI route. So then it will lead to control of these companies by China, which the government wants to avoid. So it is a Chinese control over the Indian companies, which India wants to avoid, and that is why it has barred FDI under automatic route. Also, the second reason is that a Brookings India study has shown that the total current and planned investment by Chinese entities has already crossed $26 billion, and several of the Chinese companies, even the online companies like Alibaba, Tencent, have invested and have funded companies like Paytm, Swiggy, Zomato, Ola, Big Basket, and all that. So it shows that the Chinese presence is going to be huge if it can further invest through FDI. So that will lead to a lot of Chinese presence in the Indian economy in various sectors. And while the China has not given so much of market access to India, so this is another reason why we want to put a hold on FDI through automatic route. And also there is an apprehension that several of the Chinese companies, they trace linkages to the security apparatus in China. So with increased Chinese presence in India, that could also in a way lead to the compromise in our security. So that is why security concern is also a reason why this step is being taken. But however, it is also said that this step is not very effective because through this only the FDI route is plugged. But what about the investments that come from the market route? So they will keep coming. So therefore, this measure may not be that effective. And secondly, what if the FDI is coming from a company that is registered in a country that does not share border with India, but that company has a beneficial ownership in China? So in that case also, this measure is not going to be effective. So this was about the recent measure on FDI. Now we go to the next topic regarding gender issues. So yesterday and even before that, we have spoken a lot about gender issues. We have spoken about the shadow pandemic, about the United Nations Women data on gender violence, about the way National Commission of Women has responded to the increased number of calls regarding domestic violence during the COVID crisis. And yesterday we also saw about the Bell Bajao campaign and Ring the Bell campaign as well. So in this context, there was a very important data. The National Family Health Survey 15-16 says that 30% of the women in the age group of 15 to 49 years are facing domestic violence. Now at this point of time, I want to share a very important answer writing tip with you. This is called as a crime clock. So this crime clock can be used whenever you're answering questions. So it could be a crime clock, it could be a gender violence clock, or anything. So the idea for this I got was from when I was reading the report on law and order by the Second Administrative Reforms Commission. So it basically means that you just draw a clock and then you mention some important statistics within the clock. And why it is called as a crime clock is because the statistics that you mention within this clock are are with respect to time. For example, within the clock you are mentioning that a woman is raped in India every 14 minutes. For example, a woman is acid attacked every 39 hours, and there is a dowry death every 69 minutes. So these are the data that you are going to mention within this crime clock. So this is a very important way of representation and it adds a lot of value to your answer. So this idea you can keep at the back of your mind, and depending upon the question, you can use the clock representation to represent your data more meaningfully and in an eye-catchy manner. So this was the answer writing tip. We'll move to the next topic, which is on local self-governance. So yesterday itself we had already seen that Pune Zilla Parishad is taking an important step to curb domestic violence cases. So it is sending the husbands who are doing such abuse to institutional quarantine. So these husbands will be staying in town halls or other places, and they won't be staying at their homes. So today also there is a very important step that the Pune Zilla Parishad has taken. It is providing temporary ration cards to more than 80,000 undocumented people in the district, so that these people can receive food grains from the public distribution system. And these undocumented people will also include the primitive tribes and the transgender community, who are often left out of the ambit of such benefits. So this is a very important and a very innovative measure that is taken by the Pune Zilla Parishad. So this can be quoted as an example for how effective the local self-governance can be, what steps it can take for the welfare of the people. In all such questions, this can be quoted. There was another example regarding the same in today's Indian Express, which spoke about the empowered local self-governance institutions of Kerala. So yesterday we saw what makes the Kerala model very successful, what were the ingredients of the model. So in that, one of the things that we saw was a participative governance and empowerment of the local self-governing institutions. So what this says is the local bodies in Kerala have the capacity to handle emergency. So once this COVID crisis, once the lockdown was announced, within a matter of 3 days, nearly 1,200 community kitchens were set up with the help of these local government institutions. And also, once there was decentralization of power way back in 1995, the management of the government hospitals were given to the local bodies. So these local bodies managed these government hospitals at the local level very well, and they also invested to improve the infrastructure in the hospitals, and they also supported these they also increased the support health workers numbers. So this was very crucial in tackling the COVID crisis. And Kerala also has nearly 1,200 local bodies, and at least 50% of these bodies have prepared a disaster management plan at their level. So because these local bodies have already prepared a disaster management plan, they have all the data ready with them regarding how much of aged population is there, which are all the vulnerable sections which are present in a particular ward or a district. So that data is very easily available. So these panchayats even have details about where the people can be relocated safely, which sections of the people, who are all those people who require assistance at this time of crisis. All this data is available with these local bodies. So this is a clear case study for showing how the local governments can be helpful and why we need to empower them to be able to handle such emergencies and to be able to be there for the people at the time of crisis. So even before this question on local self-governance has already been asked to analyze the effectiveness of the functioning of LSGs. So in that case, in those cases, you can use this case study to exemplify your answer. So now we'll move on to the next one, which is regarding the Korean conflict. So now why Korean conflict has come to news is because in South Korea elections were conducted, and in that the ruling party, to which the President Moon Jae-in belongs, so that got elected, and it has swept the parliamentary elections. So because the president also belongs to the same party, it is being told that this will give a boost to the efforts that South Korea is making to have a long-lasting peace with North Korea. So with this we will see why the Korean crisis began. All right. So we know that till the time of the Second World War ended, South Korea was under the Japan occupation, and once the Second World War came to an end, then Japan surrendered. So at that time Korea was divided between the USSR, that had a communist influence, and the USA, which had a capitalist influence. And at that time, the 38th parallel across that, the North and the South Korea was divided. So there was a Moscow conference that happened in 1945, where USSR and USA, they tried to have a trusteeship model over control over Korea, but then it failed. So ultimately elections were held, and Republic of Korea became South Korea, and then there was a Democratic Republic of Korea, which became the North Korea. So and both these halves of the Korea, they tried to enhance their reach territorially also, as well as ideologically. So this gave birth to the Korean conflict. And what happened in 1950 was North Korea tried to attack the South Korea. It tried to expand its territory. Because North Korea was also helped by USSR in this regard through arms and ammunition. So it tried to expand its territory by advancing south. But then China had already warned that North Korea, that South Korea, whenever it advances, it should never cross the 30th parallel. So when North Korea started advancing southwards, United States felt threatened, and United States force retaliated. And the US force crossed the 30th parallel line. So, but China had warned even before that nobody should cross the 30th parallel. So China also got involved in the conflict. But later on in 1953, after the death of Stalin, USSR came forward and it brokered an arms-ties agreement. So this led to three things. First of all, there was a ceasefire agreement. So ceasefire is very different from a peace treaty. So it was a ceasefire agreement and it was not a peace treaty, which means the war was never ended. And the second thing that happened was it said that there has to be a Korea demilitarized zone. So there has to be demilitarization across the Korean peninsula. The third thing is they agreed on exchange of prisoners of war. So these were the three things that were agreed upon when the USSR brokered the armistice agreement. But after that, North Korea, as we know, had started the arms race. So, and it also withdrew itself from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It never became a member of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. It also started conducting nuclear tests since 2006 even till 2016. It went for enrichment of uranium that enables it to make weapon grade weapons also. Then as part of the peace process also several initiatives were taken. For example, the six-party talks were started that involved six countries: North Korea, South Korea, Japan, China, Russia and United States. So it was started in 2003 and it went on till 2009. So there was these six-party talks that were happening, and but still North Korea continued to have to expand its arms. So it also started to build medium and long-range missiles also, which attracted global condemnation. And later on, to avoid this, the United States started also deployed the THAAD, which is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, was deployed by the United States. Then North Korea again came out with an intercontinental ballistic missile, which it claimed would even reach Alaska. So all of these things were going on. And this brings us to the present scenario of where these talks are headed to. And in this context, we see that what is it present status is that there is on the one hand what North Korea demands, and on the other hand what the United States demands, and these two, they do not match each other. For example, North Korea says that the economic sanctions on the North Korea should be lifted, and only then it will reduce its nuclear testing in the future. But United States says that it is only when North Korea reduces its nuclear testing, only then the economic sanctions will be relaxed. And United States also says that there has to be denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. So because of these contrasting demands, nothing much is happening. For example, there was a Singapore summit in 2018. So that also came out with some vague promises, again, which were not fulfilled. Then in February 2019, there was a Hanoi summit that also broke down. So these summits were between Donald Trump, United States President, and North Korea's President Kim Jong-un. So these talks also were breaking out. So in that case, what should be the way forward? So we can only say that these six-party talks should be revived and they must be continued. And we must adopt more diplomatic measures. We must try to negotiate, because this is a litmus test for diplomacy also. There must be concerted efforts. And also at this point of time, we can only say that pragmatism is to just wait and watch approach as to how the relations and how these efforts are going to take shape. So with this, I will go to the next topic, which is 3D printing. So the SSN College of Engineering in Tamil Nadu has developed a 3D printable protective face shields for the frontline healthcare workers. So it has already delivered these to the medical colleges there. And so this shows the importance of 3D printing as a technology, that it is able to build such face shields for the healthcare workers. So and also every year UPSC has the habit of picking up one or other technology and asking questions on that. For example, robotics and its applications. So artificial intelligence and its applications. So similarly, 3D printing and applications is a very probable question that can be asked in the exams. So we have to see what 3D printing is and what are the areas and what are the applications in which the 3D printing can be used. So first of all, 3D printing is also called as additive manufacturing. Why? Because 3D printing involves manufacturing layer by layer, one above the other and one after the other. In contrast, we know that subtractive manufacturing means that there is already a material and then portions of the material are removed from it to create the desired object. So 3D printing is actually additive manufacturing, and the first working 3D printer came way back in 1984 itself. So that was by Charles Hull, and in 1986 itself it was patented. So from here the journey started for 3D printing. And usually for 3D printing, the process involves by making a virtual design, and for making this virtual design, softwares like computer aided design, that is CAD softwares, are all used to make the virtual design. So we will also see some of the advantages of 3D printing. So first of all, it helps in customization. That means to meet the specific needs of people, you can print it because you just have to change the virtual design and then you can accordingly print it. So it can meet specific needs of people, and thus it helps in customization. Then it also offers flexibility. Flexibility as in different materials can be used to print the whatever the desired thing is needed. Then it also improves the efficiency. Then it also reduces the time, and it also reduces the cost. For example, 10 houses, to build 10 houses using 3D printing, China has actually done it at less than $5,000 per house. So it brings down the cost, and these 10 houses were also built in a very short period of time. It brings down cost, time, and improves the efficiency. And also whatever is built is also of a robust quality. At the same time, we can see that if something is to be 3D printed, there will be more demand for engineers to design these printers and to also design the blueprint of the product, etc. So there will be constructive destruction of the employment opportunities also. So there will be new jobs, skilled jobs, highly skilled jobs that will be created. And also when you compare it to subtractive manufacturing, where there is one material and from this all the wastage is taken out to arrive at the desired product. So subtractive manufacturing leads to more wastage, but in the case of additive manufacturing, you are building only what is required layer by layer, so wastage is also reduced. So these were some of the advantages of the 3D printing. Now we will look at some of the disadvantages also. So we have already dealt with what is it and the advantages. We will look at the disadvantages now. As we were talking that it will create some new jobs, highly skilled jobs, but at the same time, some jobs in the manufacturing sector may also become obsolete because things could be printed. For instance, if a house is getting 3D printed, then all the construction workers would lose their jobs. So it might it might be a blow to such jobs also. Then secondly, there is a possibility that it leads to production of some dangerous items. For example, think of 3D printing some parts of a missile or some parts of a weapon. So some dangerous parts, items could also be produced. And there is also a threat of cyber computer attacks, because these 3D printers, when they are connected to a network, there is a possibility of a cyber attack. Then the last one is also the safety concern, because these 3D printers are also used to print some organs and tissues of the human body. So how far it is going to be safe, so that is also a main thing that has to be considered. So these are some of the disadvantages. We will mainly see what are the applications. Again, when it comes to applications, we have various areas where this is applied, and we started off with the health sector, where a college in Tamil Nadu has come out with 3D printed protective face shields for the healthcare workers. So we have already seen one example related to the health. So this latest example can be quoted in the answers. Apart from that, it is also used in making hearing aids. Then it is used in making or even organs are 3D printed. When organs are 3D printed, you can imagine that there will not be any rush for organ donation, and people can lead a good quality life, and disability will reduce because you can print organs, and one doesn't have to wait for the organs endlessly. So these organs, then dental implants are also made by 3D printing. Then prosthetic legs are made by 3D printing. So these are some of the applications in health. And when it comes to manufacturing, also, as we have already seen as an example, China built houses using 3D printing. Similarly, parts of car, parts of planes are also built. Even toys are built using 3D printing. Even jewelry is made during 3D printing, using 3D printing. And these days we talk about zero effect, zero defect manufacturing. So 3D printing will increase the precision and therefore help us to manufacture more precisely. This is one thing. And even if you talk about the clothing industry, so here it is possible to take one's size by 3D scanning and then produce the best fitting. So even the textile industry, of which India is a major player, will also receive a boost by 3D, with the help of 3D printing. And there are many other areas of application also, like for instance in the case of defense. So in defense, spare parts manufacture of the defense goods and weapons and fire jets and all can be done. For example, United Kingdom's Royal Air Force and Navy is already using 3D printing to manufacture the spare parts. So this can be done. And then when it comes to education, even in the case of education, it is possible for the medical students to study the cross section of the internal organs of a human body. So that is also possible. So when you come to space again, even in the space, with the help of 3D printing, we can print the parts and or tools on site, as opposed to using rockets to bring pre-manufactured items for the space missions. So we can print parts and tools on site itself with the help of 3D printing. So these are some of the applications of 3D printing. Now let us see. So when you see here applications, you can see NASA, for instance. NASA scientists are developing a 3D printed food as an answer to food shortage. So in space also you can just print the food. So that is one thing. Then bioprinting of organs we have already talked about. Then prototyping 3D models is very much possible. So you can build such 3D models and prototypes, and they can be tested. So it will be very crucial for businesses also. So here you can see a 3D printed heart-like thing. So these are all progresses made in all of these also. So when we talk about the opportunities, we know that India is already having a very well-established software industry. So it must not be very difficult for India to make quick progress when it comes to 3D printing. And also government support is already there, when you can see several programs being launched by the government to support this. For example, Digital India is there. So government is also supporting this. And then India has MSMEs, a lot of MSMEs are there. So if these if we give them this 3D printing technology, and if they are able to manufacture using 3D printing, so that will be very cost effective and very efficient for these MSMEs. They could be globally competitive. So our aviation and automotive industry can benefit a lot from this. So also India has a very bad track record when it comes to the environment. So we have some of the highly polluted cities and industries. So because this type of manufacturing reduces wastage and it doesn't cause a lot of pollution, so environmental impact by this type of manufacturing is also less. So in that way also it is more sustainable in the long run. So therefore, how do we promote this? So first of all, you can say that government support has to be there, and we need to increase the research and development in this field. We must also collaborate with the industry. Government industry collaboration should be there. Then we must also improve training and skilling in this area using maybe the Skill India mission. Then we must also include this as part of our Make in India initiative, so that overall incentive and that ecosystem is created for 3D printing. So next is application of robotics. We have already at length seen the applications of robotics in various fields, just like we saw for 3D printing now. And we have also seen multiple examples of robotics in the previous videos. So here is one more in Kannur. These robots, there are some robots which some robots have been made. They assist the health workers in caring for the patients. So they will take the food and medicines to them, and this actually minimizes the interaction between the healthcare providers and the patients. And this robot is named as Nightingale. So you can quote this as an example. So next we will come to the discussion of yesterday's question which I had asked. So the question was the direct benefit transfer can remove all the inefficiencies of the PDS. So we had to analyze this. So this is a pretty straightforward question which is very simple, and it has a very predictable structure. So first we say that yes, DBT is good. Why it is good? Because it increases the choice of the people, and it empowers them to get whatever they want, whatever they like to eat. And it also to a large extent reduces the administrative costs, because to run the PDF, a lot of administrative cost is incurred. Then also it helps in better targeting, and it removes the ghost beneficiaries. So this also reduces it can reduce the government's subsidy bill also, because there will be better targeting, and ghost beneficiaries will be removed. And also government has already shown that there has been a cumulative benefit from the DBT since 2014. Government has put the figure at 1.7 lakh crore. So this has been the cumulative benefit from the DBT since 2014. Also, if we talk about PDS, then we have to procure, we have to store and all that. So all these holding costs will not be there, because the money is directly going to the people. So all of these are the advantages of DBT. But at the same time, you also have to, as a part of your answer, highlight what will happen if DBT is replaced, if PDS is completely replaced by DBT. Then what will all be the shortcomings and what hurdles we may possibly encounter? Those hurdles will also have to be highlighted. So for example, PDS would have protected a poor person against inflation and against price fluctuations of the food grains, but DBT doesn't do that. So against inflation, PDS acts as a cushion. Then also, if money is given to people, how sure can we be that they are going to buy food out of that? It is possible that it might go to alcohol, or it might go to buying of a lottery. So that also happens. But in the case of PDS, because food grains are only given, so it ensures at least that food is given, maybe it will be consumed. Then with the help of PDS, we are able to reach the remote areas also, which may not be possible with the case of DBT, because the amount of financial inclusion in the country is very poor, and the not many people in the villages have a bank branch within 5-kilometer radius from them. So you can talk about the financial inclusion. So they will find it difficult to go to banks and take all that. So that is also there. And then now that Aadhaar is getting linked with PDS, several people have the issue, and biometric authentication has posed a lot of issue. For example, we have seen how there have been some deaths also, and malnutrition and starvation in Jharkhand because of biometric authentication being mandated for giving the food grains at PDS. So, and also with the help of PDS, when PDS system has to run, then procurement has to be done from the farmers. So this ensures that at least a farmer has a stable income, that government is going to procure his food grains. And also it is going to give a lot of job opportunities to the people right from the time it is procured, it is transported to the FCI godowns, the fair price shops owners, all the truck drivers who are transporting these food grains. So it is actually supporting a lot of jobs in that way. So all of this is going to go. So you also have to highlight these hurdles which we may encounter while implementing the DBT. So these hurdles will also have to be mentioned. And as a way forward or as a conclusion, you can quote some good models. For example, in Chhattisgarh, In Chhattisgarh, first of all, there was a 3-stage computerization that was done regarding the PDS. So there was a digital list of all the beneficiaries. Then there was an end-to-end computerization with the help of GPS. So even when the supply arrived at the fair price shop, the beneficiary would get an update. So all of these things used to happen. So this way, leakages and corruption were curbed to a large extent. And even in the case of Gujarat, Gujarat had what is called as barcoded ration cards, because many times the biometric authentication and Aadhaar linkage and all, they could not work. So in which case barcoded ration cards were present in Gujarat. So all of these some of these you can quote. And also in apart from this, we also need to carry out some other reforms. For example, we need to go for end-to-end computerization of the PDS, and we need to involve women self-help groups to check the quantity, quality, etc. at the fair price shops. We have to go for social audit of the entire scheme. Then we must also expand what is given in the PDS, like apart from the cereals, we must also include, say, milk, eggs, pulses, coarse grains, etc. So there has to be decentralized procurement. So you can conclude with these reforms, and you can say that till we expand the infrastructure that is needed for DBT to successfully function, till then we may have to go ahead with PDS with, of course, with reforms. So with this, you can conclude the answer. Now we'll see today's question. Analyze the functioning of the local self-governance institutions in India. So this is a 15-marker question. You have to write the answer for 250 words. In at least try to frame the mental frame for the answer. So that's it for today. Thank you.